portion of this video is sponsored by Rhino Shield. So this is a Pixel 7 Pro, and this, spoiler alert, is the iPhone 14 Pro. Both Pro phones are from some of the biggest companies on Earth, and with that much might and money behind them, you'd think this might be one of the hardest comparisons out there. So I'm gonna put these two flagships head to head, see which one performs better, and more importantly, I will declare a winner and hopefully help you decide which one you should buy. Now before I get to the verses, I'm gonna wager a bet that most of you already know which one you're gonna buy anyway. You've got a preconceived notion of which one is better. You've got iOS allegiance. You probably already talk about Apple or Google in probably 2/3 of your tweets. But what if we could get rid of the bias just for a second and do a blind test? Here are photos, one from the iPhone 14 Pro, one from the Pixel Pro. Take a look at these shots, and I'll put more photos up here, and to see if you can guess. First of all, which one's which, but also think which photos look better to you. Don't get too far in the weeds about shadows or brightness or anything like that. Just look at the photos. Which one to your eye looks better? So, A is the Pixel 7 Pro, and B is the iPhone 14 Pro. Maybe got it right, maybe didn't, but the point of this was to show how good both cameras have gotten. I'm like, pretty much with every iPhone and Pixel, the flagship features always comes down to the camera, at least the past few years. And it's also where the companies, I think, compete most against each other. In recent years, especially since like last year's Pixel 6, the difference between iPhone photos and Pixel photos has become just a game of preference. It's not really which camera takes better photos anymore, but which camera takes the photos in a style that you prefer. And that's clearly no different with this year's phones. The Pixel 7 Pro is sporting essentially the same hardware from last year with a few tweaks. I think a lot of people would say 7 Pro is what the 6 Pro should have been. It has a 50 megapixel main camera sensor, 12 megapixel ultrawide that is slightly wider at 125 degrees, and a 48 megapixel 5x telephoto, which is up from 4x from last year. The iPhone is packing some brand new hardware. It's got a 48 megapixel main camera, which is just a gigantic jump from the 12 megapixel for the past few years. It also has a 12 megapixel ultrawide with 120 degree field of view and a, I guess, tried and true, now old, 12 megapixel 3x telephoto. Spec-wise, these are mostly similar with a few key differences. The main cameras, I think, perform very similarly with both these phones. They are sharp and detailed and produce really very real-to-life photos, but they do it with different decisions in the processing. And this is where the preference thing comes into place. So the Pixel takes HDR like right to heart. It wants to make sure the shadows are seen as well as the highlights. The iPhone is clearly not afraid to let the shadows crush and highlights totally blow out. There's no right or wrong way here. Again, what you prefer. And if you are looking at these photos individually, I think you'll likely just love both. So unsurprisingly, there's really one big difference in the camera hardware, and that's where you see the biggest difference in the photo results. Let's talk about zoom. Any way you slice it, 5 times in high resolution is better than 3 times in low resolution. And in practice, I think you really see it here. With the Pixel, the telephoto camera looks almost the same as the main camera, just zoomed in, which I think ideally is what you want from a camera system. The photos are sharp and detailed and are using the really amazing Google and Pixel processing. One of the main Achilles heels of the camera systems these days is that the main cameras look great, but the ultra wide and the zoom generally do not. The Pixel 7 Pro absolutely fixes that. I think Google should be commended for it. The iPhone's zoom, on the other hand, is not bad, just really dated. It's the same basic hardware they've had for years, and it feels that way when looking at these photos, especially when you compare them to the Pixel. They're fine, but it's obvious you aren't using the main camera. Look at these shots right here. One from the iPhone, one from the Pixel. And when you look at these together, it seems very clearly time that the iPhone gets an updated zoom. Where you get the opposite effects, I think, is in low light. In my use, the iPhone seems to have a big leg up in low light photos. We actually were doing a shoot for the Hummer EV. Shout out to that video. These two photos look drastically different. The Pixel has a ton of noise, and it seems to be sort of out of phase with the LED wall behind it, whereas the iPhone handles it perfectly, exactly what you'd expect from a photo like this. Now, obviously a small, unique use case, but the photonic engine of the iPhone does seem to be putting in sort of the work to make sure low light photos look as good as possible. Even though the Pixel's night sight feature is incredible, just regular photos seem to be falling a little bit behind. Video is a similar story here. The iPhone is still video king. And that's not to say Google hasn't stepped up their game, because they have. And the pure image quality of the Pixel 7 Pro video is great. But where Apple has just a big leg up is with the refinement and stabilization of the sort of specialty features. The iPhone stabilization is, I don't know, maybe it's cliche, but it's butter. It is smooth and fluid. It's like a slip and slide. It's exactly what you'd expect and what you would want. And when you go into action mode, it gets even more so. The Pixel just seems to not quite be able to get it right. There are micro jitters everywhere. Just look here. And once you see those, it's really hard to unsee it. It seems like Google and the Pixel are trying really hard to make video smooth, but just aren't there yet. And that's similar to what you get with the cinematic mode. The iPhone isn't perfect by any means, but it does have a more natural look and a more natural blur. The Pixel can look good, but when it doesn't, it looks bad. With every other part of this camera, as I said, it really just comes down to preference. Do you like the way the Pixel processes photos? Do you prefer the way the iPhone processes photos? Your answer will greatly influence which camera you want in your phone. No matter which camp you're in when it comes to this versus, you're gonna want to protect your phone. I don't care what version of Gorilla Glass we are on. When glass meets concrete, concrete is always going to win. And this video sponsor, Rhino Shield, is known for creating super protective and customizable phone cases and accessories. You can do pretty much anything. They got endless customization options, so you can get your own style out there. Things like case styles, colors. They got print designs and a bunch of personalization services. They also have some really cool design collaborations with some really well-known brands. My favorite's the NBA. Get a Lakers case. NASA, Naruto, even PewDiePie is up there as well. All that's fine, but I think protection is what matters, and you are getting that with Rhino Shield. You're getting 360 protection with the phone case and screen protector. Of course, they're all MagSafe compatible. They actually have some of the most powerful magnets in any case here. They're actually 2 times the strength of Apple's official MagSafe products, so they will stick anywhere. And because Black Friday, Rhino Shield has you covered. They are having the biggest sale of the year. All products are up to 60% off. Because you just dropped so much money on a new phone, it's worth saving the cash there. So now is the perfect time to get yourself or your loved one the case they have always wanted. And because Rhino Shield stands behind their products, they've got a lifetime replacement warranty for all of their cases, available for all iPhones, including the new 14 line, and a ton of Android flagship devices, including the Pixel 7. Use code JOHN-BF for an extra 10% off. I like to think it stands for best friend, but probably stands for Black Friday. You get that 10% in addition to the Black Friday discounts already on the website. If you want to check it out though, we'll put a link down below. All right, camera aside, holding both of these phones in your hands, a pretty similar experience. The 14 Pro is the same design we had since really the 12, and the 7 Pro is essentially the same as the 6 Pro. I do think that what Google did here with the 7 Pro design is really good. The metal camera bar looks amazing. It elevates the design in a really more significant way than I expected. It looks and feels premium. But looks aside, Dynamic Island has quickly become a really native part of the iPhone experience. It's not something that I'm wowed at on a day-to-day basis. It more feels like an extension of the hardware that wasn't possible before. And sort of in that small way, I think Apple hit it out of the park. I really like having it, even if the sort of the wow factor is kind of worn off. Speaking of display, one area that I far prefer on the Pixel side is always on display. The Pixel, like an always on display should, goes black and shows you time notifications. That's perfect. Just do that, every phone maker. The iPhone, on the other hand, takes the always on display very literally. It's always on, just dimmed. It killed battery for me. I couldn't tell if my phone was on or off. I didn't like it. I actually turned it off. And I love always on every other phone. So that should tell you all you need to know about how I feel about it. As years go on, processors and high-end phones are getting more and more specialized. The A16 in the iPhone, I think, set out to be the best mobile processor out there. And from a specs perspective, it is. If there's anything that you want a phone to do, chances are the iPhone can handle it. Pixel, on the other hand, tries to specialize into being the best Google processor. It's optimized for what Google does best, and the second generation Tensor is accomplishing that really well. And what I mean by like what Google does best, things like real-time captions and translation on device to real-time transcription in notes, and a lot of others, those are AI-based applications. And the Tensor G2 is flexing hardcore what Google set out the Pixel to do and be, more like a personal assistant. And in that use case, it really works. And all of that stuff doesn't hurt Pixel's battery life either, which is very surprising. It's got a beastly 5,000 mAh battery, is a really solid performer, and easily gets through a day. iPhone, on the other hand, seems to be a downgrade from the iPhone 13 Pro just on battery life side. I can still get through a whole day, but it does not feel like a battery champ anymore at all. When I had the always on display turned on, battery life was even worse. The more I tend to examine these phones, the more I realize they are very similar in almost every category. When it comes to picking one, you've got two main things to consider. First, the phone itself, which we talked about throughout the entire video. Second is price, whether you're willing to pay for those extra features. I think after the Pixel 7 Pro starts to inch out a little bit ahead. 7 Pro starts out at $899, whereas a 14 Pro is $999. Are those differences worth $100? For you, they may not be. So I will say, if the Pixel could get slightly better in video, get those micro jitters worked out, and if you don't have any OS allegiance, that would be the better buy. But I'm somebody who films video for a living, and oftentimes I'm using my phone to film said videos. I need the best video that I can get. And because of that small, minor issue, if both of these are on the table, I'm gonna pick up the 14 Pro, but not before I think about it a little more than I used to. So hope you guys enjoyed the verses. Before you hop out to the next video, just a reminder to check out Rhino Shield's Black Friday discounts. Again, use code JOHN-BF for another 10% off. They're already up to 60% sales they got going on. Links will be down below.